My mom and my dad.
Your mom and dad?
My mom and my dad.
Okay.
So you called the police, but at that point, you had already decided.
We had decided not to.
You weren't going to say anything.
We had decided that our feeling was not, we'll just explain what happened and it'll be okay. We were very stunned, and we felt that we would go to jail, obviously, and it was a selfish reason to just not want to have to go through that.
You are listening to the Roberta Glass True Crime Report, putting the true back in true crime. From New York City, Roberta Glass is now on the record.
All right. How is everybody? I want to talk about the Menendez brothers, and why they are being released is not the reason that everyone thinks that they're being released. Last time we were here, we heard George Gascon talk about the Menendez brothers being released, and meaning they're being resentenced because all of this new evidence that they had been essayed by the father, never mind that they argued in court that they were essayed by both parents and that they were in fear for their lives when they burst through the doors of their parents' den, where their parents, Jose and Kitty Menendez, were eating ice cream. Hold on 1 minute, please. So that they burst through their, thank you, sorry guys. I just, I'm going to play this clip. I'm not sure if I'm having technical difficulties or not, but we'll see. But I wanted to play the clip of Gascon. And if we're having technical difficulties, I'm just going to have to pause. That's just the reality, guys. It's a live show. I know when my intro came on, I just couldn't hear anything through my headphones, and I'm checking all my wires and everything's connected right. So I don't know what it is. Hopefully it's just like a glitch in the system, but I'm working on it behind the scenes. Here's Gascon talking about the people in this office and why they released them. But this is what we found out recently, thanks to NBC LA. This is not the reason they are getting released, or this is not the reason that the DA's office is going to a judge and recommending that they get released. So take a listen to the original reason why the DA of Los Angeles, George Gascon, says they are getting released. Take a listen here.
Front of the microphone there, expected to make this bombshell announcement. Let's listen.
Before I begin speaking, I want to also introduce some other people that are here with me, and I hope I'm pronouncing the names right because I've seen handwritten part of it. But I have Ana Maria Barat, Jose Menendez, Jose Menendez and niece Karen Vandermolen, and Kitty's niece. They're all here with us. Also with us here is Brock Lunsford. He's the assistant head deputy for the post-litigation conviction unit.
Okay, problem solved. Problem solved. Thank you. So this is the only time he goes through a long list of all the quote-unquote victims' families that are there. And pay attention to this young woman in black. She behind Gascon. She is clearly fully on board for the release of Eric and Lyle Menendez, these two convicted killers. Take a look at her while he's talking.
And Nancy Cervier, who is the Deputy District Attorney in charge of the resentencing unit. Let me begin by telling you that this is a case where we've had many people in this office spend a great deal of time reviewing the case. I have to tell you unequivocally that we don't have a universal agreement. There are people in the office that strongly believe that the Menendez brothers should stay in prison the rest of their life, and they do not believe that they were murdered. And there are people in the office that strongly believe that they should be released immediately, and that they were in fact. I have to tell you that after...
Did you see her? She's like shaking her head when she said people don't believe them. That young woman behind George Gascon, funny. So there's the reason why he says that. He says, regardless, we have a conflict in opinions or conflicted opinions in the office. But regardless of that, I've already set up a entire new unit to look at all these old convictions that our office did and undo them, basically. Because if you know anything about George Gascon, he is the one who set up this entire group of DAs, meaning former defense attorneys or public defenders, to run as district attorney for the sole purpose to release as many people as possible and to convict as little people as how do you say that? To convict few people and to keep the sentences down of the few people that they did convict in that office. Okay. So they call it restorative justice. I call it pro-criminal. Another wing, basically what they are is another wing of the defense. And you've heard Mark Garagos in his press conferences and in his interviews, who's the lawyer for the Menendez brothers, constantly refer to his conversations with George Gascon behind the scenes and how I view this whole release of the Menendez brothers as a coordinated effort between George Gascon and the defense team. So as they're presenting it to the public, like, hey, we just came up to George Gascon and asked if you would reconsider this. And they had a press conference of some of the Menendez family members asking George Gascon to release the Menendez brothers. I believe it was already established behind the scenes that he was going to do this. And it was just a way of hyping it up beforehand to the public so that by the time that George Gascon did announce that he was going to do this, because he did make one mistake in this, he put up a picture of Eric Menendez with the undated Xerox letter. So let me make that clear. So one of the new pieces of evidence which really aren't new at all, is a letter that was Xeroxed that was supposedly found in Andy Cano's home. His mother just died. Andy Cano died years ago. He was a cousin of Eric and Lyle Menendez, is the only cousin to testify to this kind of abuse on the stand. A letter from Eric, undated, Xeroxed, saying in vague language about his relationship with his father, and he comes into his room, and I believe it was a script for Andy Cano on the stand. Why Lyle says that this supposed undated Xerox letter existed back when they were going to trial. So it's supposedly written 8 months before, but it's undated. Could be written anytime. You can't look at the ink. You can't look at the paper. Could have been written. It could have been written 3 months ago, for all we know. My feeling is that it was a script for Andy Cano. And so why didn't they present it to the defense team at the time of trial is my argument. It would have been great evidence, the best evidence they had in the whole case. Hey, Dean Walker, nice to see you. Thanks for the super sticker. Appreciate it. So that's the way that it was presented here with the Menendez brothers. Free them, rah, rah. It's all due to this new documentary. And it's all having to do with issues of SA that we didn't really understand back then. That's the argument, that we didn't understand. And my argument is, and I think so many of the people that lived through the trials of the Menendez brothers and who watched the first trial and who are reading the transcripts, and to everyone who's asked me for transcripts, thank you. It's I will get them out to you. I'm just trying to figure out how. They're enormous, enormous files, and they're filed in a kind of new way, but I will get them to you. So for everyone who lived through these trials, we remember that this was the most talked about element of their case. Everyone was discussing abuse excuse. Is this an excuse? Did this really happen? Do you believe the Menendez brothers? It looks like 2024 is 1993, 94 all over again. And back in 93, 94, they had a whole host of young women, just like they do in 2024, who believed the Menendez brothers, wanted to support them. It's unreal. Everything old is new again. So that's the statement made, but it's quite different. The real reason the DA is asking that they be released. Hey, Tuesday Money. So nice to see you. Thanks for the super sticker. So here's NBC LA's report on.
And we begin at 6 with that effort to get the Menendez brothers released from prison. The case has now been transferred to a courtroom in Van Nuys. Good evening to you. I'm Robert Kovacik.
And I'm Colleen Williams. That's where a judge will now consider the LA County District Attorney's new request to have them resentenced to lesser terms, making them eligible then for release on parole. Our investigative reporter Eric Leonard is in the court today, or was in the court, joins us live with an update. Eric.
Hi, Colleen and Robert. Well, we've been tracking this resentencing motion ever since it was filed late last Thursday. It's been handed from judge to judge and now appears to be headed for a hearing in Van Nuys, the same court complex where Eric and Lyle Menendez were convicted and sentenced to life without parole decades ago. Now, no hearing was held in open court this morning in Van Nuys Superior Court, but the assistant presiding judge received the resentencing motion and sent it along to another courtroom where it will be assigned somewhere in the Van Nuys courthouse. That's also where any additional documents will be filed and where there would likely be the hearing in which a judge would decide whether or not there was a good reason to recall the case and resentence the brothers to a reduced term. DA George Gascon announced last week he would pursue this resentencing. The court documents filed by his office highlight the brothers' mostly good behavior in prison as the reason they should get relief and a chance at parole.
Okay, did everybody hear that? For those in the back, the reason the DA is asking that the courts resentence the Menendez brothers is not because of this new evidence, not because George Gascon is 30 points down in the polls to Nathan Hochman. No, no, no. It's because absolutely that they have been perfect model prisoners. And my mother doesn't work in prison, but she volunteers in jail. They have a saying around jail, which is they're all so well behaved in jail. Would think it would be the same in prison. A couple episodes back, I played a prison captain who guarded the Menendez brothers and thought that they should never be released. So very different than the way the media is reporting this. So to do that whole press conference, these are the sleight of hands in innocence fraud. to put out one reason. So the reason we're doing it is because they're not saying it's because the reason they're doing it, but the first topic out of their mouth is SA. It's because they were SA'd, and some of them believe that they should be let out because of this, and some of believe they don't. So that makes it seem like, but we're going ahead with it. It seems like that's the reason, no? Then you get to the actual court filing, and the court filing says let them out because they've been model prisoners. Quite different.
If the judge who hears the case agrees, the two would likely be resentenced to 50 years to life each, which would make them eligible for an immediate parole hearing. Now, you may remember there is a separate court proceeding going on having to do with whether the jury that convicted the brothers should have heard more evidence about the brothers' claims they were physically insulted by their father.
So that's another claim that they have going on in a different court, having to do with the jury not hearing more claims, that they weren't allowed to bring everything in that they brought in the first case where they got a hung jury, that they had to limit their defense. And isn't it interesting that Leslie Abramson, Eric's lawyer, who really created this defense, she represented Arnel Salvatierra, who shot his father, Oscar Salvatierra, as he slept. And she argued to a jury that he was abused in the same way, terrible way, horrific way, compared him to Lisa Steinberg. And the jury bought it and convicted him of voluntary manslaughter. And ultimately the judge gave him probation. That was the case before she represented Eric Menendez. So isn't it interesting that Leslie Abramson, the woman who is the architect of this defense, has nothing to say about how she had her hands tied and was so limited? Because the way I hear it talked about in the press is that none of the evidence of this kind of SA evidence was let in the second trial. That's just not true. It's just limited. And Lyle didn't even take the stand in the second trial.
At the time of that trial, interestingly, the DA did not file this resentencing request with the judge who's already considering that motion. We didn't hear back from the DA's office this afternoon as to why that happened. We'll try to find out and bring that to you. Live in the newsroom, I'm investigative reporter Eric Leonard, NBC4 News. Back to you.
Good job, Eric Leonard, on that. Kind of good reporting you see so seldom. But did everybody understand? So there's two things going on at the same time. One, there's DA Gascon asking the courts to resentence the Menendez brothers because they've been model citizens. And then there's an appeal from the defense team saying, in another court, saying they should be resentenced because they did not get a fair second trial and not enough SA evidence was let in. But all of this is moving, is going to, whether this, even if they get this approved, it will all move very, very slowly, way too slowly for George Gascon, who is anxious to have the Menendez is on the courthouse steps hugging their relatives. Our country is obsessed with those scenes. It's like crack cocaine to the American public. We can't get enough of it. Having prisoners released and that shot of them coming out of court with either their fist in the air or hugging, crying and hugging their relatives, or other people are crying. So seldom are they crying. And then talking about how terrible it was for them in prison. And they're the victim. It's like a scene played out again and again and again in our media. But here's another piece of media about how long this is going to take. Take a listen.
This morning, that new effort by the attorney for the Menendez brothers.
My apologies, wrong one. Third time's the charm.
several months before the Menendez brothers are eligible for a parole hearing. And even before that, a judge must first approve their resentencing.
The Department of Corrections has released new photos of the brothers you just saw there. CBS 8's David Gottfredson shows us what life behind bars looks like in the Otay Mesa prison.
Eric Menendez has been here at Donovan State Prison since 2013. He was reunited with his older brother when Lyle Menendez was transferred here in 2018. But now it looks like the brothers will have to wait at least 7 or 8 months before the possibility of a release date. The Department of Corrections has released new mugshots, both taken October 10th, of 53-year-old Eric Menendez and 56-year-old Lyle Menendez. The Los Angeles District Attorney recommended resentencing for the brothers last week, but it could take 30 to 45 days to schedule a court hearing. The brothers were convicted in the 1989 shotgun murders of their parents, Jose and Kitty Menendez. It will be up to the judge to decide whether resentencing will take place, reducing the original sentence of life without parole to 50 years to life with the possibility of parole. Then and only then would the brothers be eligible for a parole hearing. The Department of Corrections says the Board of Parole Hearings schedules the hearings no earlier than 6 months out as required by notice provisions and other mandates. That means 7 to 8 months at the earliest for a release date,
and that's not going to help George Gascon, who wants this to move along as quickly as possible to get all the Menendez voting for him because he's 30 points down in the polls. Oh, did I move backwards? Here we go.
earliest for a release date and probably longer. The brothers are housed at Cell Block E at Donovan State Prison in Otay Mesa. It's a special housing unit for well-behaved inmates. In fact, the Menendez brothers both helped paint this mural on the walls of Donovan. They have gotten married and gone to college while in prison. Both brothers earning Associate of Arts degrees in sociology from Southwestern College, and Lyle earning a Bachelor of Arts from UC Irvine.
They're not getting away scot-free. Understand, there's been punishment, substantial punishment meted out.
Attorney Gene Iredale says because the brothers have spent almost 35 years in prison, and because there is new evidence that as boys, their father, their chances at parole look good.
They no longer represent a risk to society, and they have been substantially punished for.
Says the defense attorney. They've only been in prison for the equivalent of a little over 15 years for each murder. They murdered 2 people brutally. People are acting like this is one murder, one person. This is 2 lives.
The conduct in which they engaged.
David Gottfredson, CBS 8.
Okay, so that's that. But ABC News, and just had to use the audio here, came out with Garrigo saying, this isn't fast enough. We don't like this. We don't like the idea that they are being resentenced. So what are they being resentenced? So they're being resentenced from life without the possibility of parole to essentially murder, which gives them a possibility of parole. Okay. And under George Gascon's new sentencing guidelines, which means that they were youthful offenders. So they've changed the meaning of youthful offenders from, say, under 18 or 21 to 26. So they qualify now. They've done this in Chicago too. So you're basically considered a child until you turn 26. And so they qualify under that resentencing guidelines for youthful offenders. So take a listen to Garrigo saying, forget this. Can we just get them to plead guilty? Can we get them to resentence them to manslaughter instead? This is out today from ABC News. Take a listen.
To expedite their release, Mark Garrigo saying he may try to get their conviction for murder reduced to voluntary manslaughter.
I think they're cautiously optimistic that they can see some real relief at this point.
Their family also hopeful.
They have served a penance, and now it's time for them to come home.
Last week, the LA District Attorney with that recommendation for resentencing after new evidence prompted him to re-examine the case, but seeming to stand by the brothers' conviction for murder.
What do you tell people in your own office who say these two young men clearly premeditated this murder?
We're not letting them off. Okay, first of all, I have to be very clear. Those were brutal murders. They were premeditated, and that's why they got life without the possibility.
But you are recommending that they be released essentially immediately.
I am recommending that they be released because I believe that the people that they were is not the same people that we're seeing 35 years later.
Eric and Lyle Menendez are currently serving sentences of...
That's a BS argument that I don't really believe. I'm essentially the same person. I mean, my interests are different. Maybe my beliefs are different. My friends are different. But I'm essentially the same person I was at 6 months and 6 years, at 16 years old, than I am at 20 and 30 and now at 51 years old. So I don't think people really do. Their essence really does change. But you hear this so often in these defense narratives, wrongful conviction narratives, that they're different people. How? As John Lewin pointed out, they still haven't expressed any remorse because they're still lying. I mean, they're still lying about what happened to them. There's still zero evidence that any of this happened. And Roy Rosello's affidavit is a joke. It's not a joke, and I mean, it's a good story unless you know how far a distance it is from Princeton, New Jersey to New York City in a limousine. I mean, and according to Lyle, he picked out every Menudo brother, and this is the only Menudo brother this happened to. He didn't want to do it in a hotel room. So Roy Rosello's story is he didn't want to do it in a hotel room. He didn't want to essay his client his new client, who's one of the biggest money makers for his label, in a hotel room in New York. No, he wanted to bring him back in a limo to his home where his wife was and his kids were. Roy Rosello says he saw Kitty and his boys, which I thought was an interesting meaning, Lyle and Eric, there. And then he insisted he drink a full glass of wine and did something criminal. I mean, and there's not one specific memory detail that could be corroborated. It just all seems so made up. I just love to know what the relationship is between Lyle Menendez and Eric Menendez's defense team, or Eric Menendez and Lyle Menendez and Roy Rosello. Does Roy Rosello have a relative who was in prison with the Menendez brothers? Or has he been friendly with the Menendez brothers since their arrest? Or does he have a wife who's on Team Menendez and he concocted this story to help them out? Has he been promised anything behind the scenes? Certainly made his documentary much more sensational. Who else would want to watch a Menudo documentary for any other reason but this? Who's a true crime aficionado who wants to hear this story? Anyone who's recommended me to watch this Menudo documentary, it's all because of this part of it. Certainly helped him out that way. But we don't know what went on behind the scenes, and we really don't know the real origins of this new letter to Andy Cano, this undated Xerox letter. Well, that's convenient that it's undated. Who says it was written 8 months before the murder? Eric? Lyle? It always comes down to their word, and we know they're liars. They lied on the 911 call. They lied for months afterwards. They went from hotel room to hotel room with guards because they said the same people who were out to get their parents, who killed their parents, were out to get them. They spent their parents' money to the tune of, in this day's money, $1.78 million. They robbed their neighbors before the murder multiple times. And they never mentioned any of this abuse to their psychiatrist, Dr. Oziel. So what are we talking about here?
Life without parole for the grisly shotgun murders of their parents in 1989. If a judge agrees to resentencing, their case would still require the sign-off of the California Parole Board and the state's governor, Gavin Newsom, a process that could take a year. But if a judge recommends that Eric and Lyle's murder conviction be reduced to voluntary manslaughter, they could be released immediately.
Both paths could lead to freedom for the Menendez brothers. However, if the judge were to downgrade the charge of murder to voluntary manslaughter, they would be entitled to immediate release. They would have already served the maximum amount of time.
On his weekly podcast, Politicking, Governor Newsom weighing in.
What matters are the facts. What matters is justice and fairness, not treating them any worse because they're celebrities, not treating them certainly any better because they're celebrities.
The Menendez brothers never denied killing their parents, but insisted they acted in self-defense after claiming they suffered years at the hands of their father and fearing for their lives.
I wanted to die. In a way, I did not protect Lyle.
The DA telling me the brothers would likely not have been convicted of murder had the trial taken place today, but there's a long way to go here. A superior court.
Right. The DA telling me, the DA who's another arm of the defense team telling me that they wouldn't be convicted today. I call BS on that. It was not the Stone Age. It was the most discussed point of their defense back then. And I don't think our understanding has grown that much deeper. They were seen as liars by the jury, and anyone who takes a deep look at the case comes to the same conclusion. That no one's saying it was functional family. Obviously not to have ended this way for them, but these claims of abuse were wholly created out of the mind of Leslie Abramson, who had such success with it, with Arnel Salvatierra, her previous client before Eric Menendez. And Lyle Menendez was caught fabricating evidence from prison. I think he's still fabricating evidence. That's my opinion. So add on another topic, add one more person to the list with myself, Lyle and Eric Menendez's uncle, Kitty's brother, DA John Lewin, had this detective who investigated the Menendez's murder to the list of people speaking out about the fact that they should not be released. Take a listen to this. Hold on one second. Let me move it backwards a little bit. Take a listen.
The battle is on to keep the notorious Menendez brothers behind bars.
They should not be out on the street again, period. They're criminals. They murdered 2 people.
Tom Linehan is the former Beverly Hills police detective who investigated the brutal double murders of Kitty and Jose Menendez in 1989. Today, he's speaking exclusively to Inside Edition. What is your reaction to the DA recommending resentencing of the Menendez brothers?
It frustrates me because you're talking about 2 people that were savagely murdered. And the fact that they may or may not have, we never found that in our investigation.
I also spoke to Nathan Hochman, who's running against LA's embattled district attorney, George Gascon. He calls the DA's bid to set the brothers free.
So that's Nathan Hochman, who's up 30 points in the polls against DA Gascon, who is the current district attorney of Los Angeles, who is trying to petitioning the courts to let out the Menendez brothers. There's Nathan Hochman. He's weighing in on this piece.
A PR stunt.
Gascon has this made-for-TV event
By doing it now, it is clearly a desperate political media ploy to sort of cater to the voters and get them distracted from his record of public safety.
Today, the DA will formally ask a judge to review the brothers' case and overturn their sentence of life without parole. Gascon admits there's a rebellion among some lawyers on his staff.
It is very possible that there may be members of this office that will be present in court opposing the resentencing.
If a judge agrees with resentencing the brothers, the case would still have to go to the state's parole board, which would ultimately determine whether the brothers should be set free. Attorney Mark Garagos represents the Menendez brothers. With this renewed hope that the brothers will be released, have you as a family talked about where they will go? Will they live with one of you?
We have a robust reentry plan that we have already previewed with the district attorney.
They're going to live with Kim Kardashian, sir. We've already send them to live with Kim Kardashian or Rosie O'Donnell. Have them go to either one of their homes. Those are the celebrities that have advocated for their release, communicating with them from behind bars. Rosie O'Donnell has, I believe, visited Lyle in addition to speaking with him on the phone and in a podcast. And Kim Kardashian has frequently visited them and advocated for them. And somewhere, someone is paying Mark Garagos the money, and it's unknown who. Is it Rosie? Is it Kim Kardashian? Is it another Menendez behind the scenes that we've never heard of?
Which went into their calculation as to recommending resentencing.
Eric is married to Tammy Menendez, who owns this pet grooming business in Las Vegas with her daughter, who Eric helped raise from behind bars. If set free, it's believed Eric would move to Las Vegas to be with his wife.
How do you help raise a child from behind bars? Just curious, just asking for a friend. How does that happen?
Life of 25 years. Lyle Menendez is married to Rebecca Sneed, a journalist in Sacramento who...
Do you know there's a high percentage of journalists are psychopaths? Did you guys know that? just curious.
Visits him weekly.
What's the point of having a sentence for any crime if you're not going to do the sentence?
Right, exactly. And these sentences are handed out and calculated so meticulously. It's a whole calculation with numbers, certain plus and minus for different mitigating factors. And after all the victim impact statements are read and heard and everyone is heard, these are not done lightly, handed out lightly and without consideration. They're so considered. So to have a pro-criminal DA come in for his own self-interests and just erase all that careful work is hard to take. And the careful work of the jury, too. But that's the name of the game when we're talking innocence, fraud, campaigns. The point is to circumvent the courts or bamboozle the courts or make the court a kangaroo court, all in your favor, to really go around all that careful consideration that the courts do. And one of the ways they do it is by having everyone play on the same team, and there's no opposition to any of the things that they want. That's what you have here. You have no one's protecting the actual conviction. So it's going to go before a judge, and you're going to have the prosecutor's office, unless someone shows up from the DA's office. And I'm not sure how that's done, and opposes this. And George Gascon says there will be. And that will be interesting if that happens. And I know that the uncle says he wants to be at this hearing. But George Gascon, one of the things that he did was get rid of victims' families, the whole department that notifies, victims' family members when their loved one comes up for parole, to keep them out of the parole process. So he wants to keep victims' families out of the process as much as possible. So it's kind of hilarious to have him in the beginning, to see him in the beginning of that press conference read off the entire list of the Menendez family that's there at the press conference. It's like the first and last time he's ever mentioned a victim's family member's name or acknowledged them or met with them. And in this case, they happen to also be the killer's family members. So just a short one for today. That's what I have for today. Please hit the like, subscribe to the channel, share this episode. And I will be back tomorrow at 6 p.m. Eastern. Have a terrific night, everybody. Before I go, just going to play the song I wrote for the Menendez Brothers. We did it for the money. Have a great night, everybody. Thanks for listening.
Ice cream on the table, TV on the tube. You must protect the label. Everything you heard is true. Your mom and dad, the senators made us blue. Crack dealers, Wells, is it boo-hoo or hoo-hoo? We did it for the money. We consoled ourselves with Rolex watches, hand-tailored suits, ran our hand over designer fabric swatches, broke into the computer, rewrote that will. A Jeep Wrangler for a lady, paid with bloody dollar bills. We did it for the money. Kim K believes us, so does Rosie. Oh, strangers weep, we had it so bad. It's the Menendez Bros show. Just release us from prison. We'll play victims so well. Squeeze out some tears. The truth we never tell. Looking for suckers to manipulate emotions. Someone with empathy, enough to fill oceans. Just break these prison bars. They'll appear on your YouTube show. Lie and sob and wink. If you know, you know. We did it for the money. We did it for the money. We console ourselves with Rolex watches, hand-tailored suits, ran our hand over designer fabric swatches, broke into the computer, rewrote that will. A Jeep Wrangler for a lady, paid with bloody dollar bills. We did it for the money. Kim K believes us, so does Rosie. Oh, strangers weep, we had it so bad. It's the Menendez Bros show. Just release us from prison. We'll play victims so well. Squeeze out some tears. The truth we never tell. Looking for suckers to manipulate emotions. Someone with empathy, enough to fill oceans. Just break these prison bars. We'll appear on your YouTube show.